Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. My name is Glenn Keller, and in this demonstration what we are doing is we're continuing on in the series for upgrading our 2412 instance to 2506. Now this is a single box instance. We are doing this with Deployment Center and focusing on the new way of performing the upgrades. If you missed the first video, definitely take a look at that. We talk a little bit more about how to stop all the services on the box, how to back up the production database, or how to properly do an upgrade by standing up a different system with a copy of the prod data. So definitely tune into that and take a look at the associated documentation. We make sure that you use the Siemens documentation, tips, and best practices as your source, and then use our videos as more of a demonstration on how you would maybe go about doing that. But in this demonstration, what we're doing is the next step. So in order to upgrade Teamcenter, now that we have it all shut down in the services and everything, we need to go forward and basically upgrade the Deployment Center tool. Now, if you've been deploying with Teamcenter for a while, we used to have a tool called the TEM, the Teamcenter Environment Manager. It is still a part of the build and is going to have kind of longer term support, but we always had to patch up the TEM before we patched up Teamcenter. And this is going to be no different. So the trick here is, and again, definitely take a look at the documentation provided, but I'm going to extract this Deployment Center folder that you see in the 2506 package. So I've got that right up at the top here. And then in there, I'm going to essentially extract it. Extract files. I'm using 7-zip. You can use the local extractor. And then once it gets extracted, it's going to provide you with a set of files. It is just Deployment Center like any other Deployment Center. But what we're going to do is essentially run it against our Deployment Center, telling our existing one that we have new data. The Deployment Center extracted folder is in here, and then under the Deployment Center subfolder, you can come down, and what you're looking for is not the install configuration script, but the upgrade configuration script. So I'm going to open this up with an editor, and what this is going to do, drag it down here. So what this is going to allow us to do is, there we go, basically modify what we want to upgrade with. So we need to, if we're doing this in place, we need to make sure that these values match or any adjustments are made for the new version of Deployment Center that we're getting. And we need to go through and just kind of populate this. Now, I already have a installation of Deployment Center. So if I come into Siemens Deployment Center, I have this Deployment Center build here with a repository and data inside of it. So if I come into Deployment Center, I had originally installed this with this install config file. So if I open this in Visual Studio Code, I should be able to compare and contrast the settings. So the server directory for Deployment Center is this web server folder in my build. I could obviously create something different if I wanted to, but I'm going to copy this and I'm going to come into upgrade config.properties and I'm going to update the server directory here. So I'm picking kind of the same thing. Now, if you didn't want to update it in that directory, you could go through and look at potentially defining another one. I'm just upgrading in place. Then we need to go into the repo publisher port and subscriber ports. So in here, if I come down, it's not the same order and not the same requirements for the upgrade as the install. So you are going to have to find it. In our case, the repository port is 8093. And the publisher port and subscriber port is this 8081 and 61616. So I'm going to grab the 8081 and verify that it is the same here, and it is the same here. So we're good to go. I'm going to use my existing user. Again, it's up to you to choose a different user and password, but ours will remain the defaults. And then my service names, I want to make sure that the new services start with Teamcenter, just because it creates a nice grouping in the services window to allow me to find everything. You do not need to do this functionality-wise. If I come down a little bit further, if I have extra software directories, which I do, I need to spell them out here. So in our original install, the Deployment Center build comes with a repository and software. I did not populate any software in this build. I created a media directory that I was using, and instead of having to copy all of the data in there, I have my BMID template that I have not deployed yet. I have my 2412 media, and I have my 2506 media. So this is going to be the other extra software repository directory that I want. So I'm just going to say add that in. And if you look, this one up here has the double slashes. So will this one. So I'm going to add this in. Okay, so we've got our extra software repository. Now the repo service, this is going to be for my Windows box. You do not need to uncomment these for Linux. This is just so that it will essentially run as a service. I'm going to put my ./infodba, and I need to make sure I use the correct format for this. I do need to include the domain, the local domain here. If I don't, it will yell. So I'm going to do that again for this one. And if you're unsure about the format or the domain you're using, definitely consult your infrastructure architects or your administration, but I can see my original username is here. So I've got those set, and then I'm going to scroll down. If you're using encrypted passwords, definitely specify true here and then follow the comments along that path. I do have an OS username for the DC service. So the service that's going to run is going to again run as infodba, and the password here is going to be infodba. Again, this is the operating system credentials. If I wanted additional script directories where the scripts get generated, I could define those here. We'll use maintenance mode later on to do that. HTTPS, and switch to true if you're using HTTPS to communicate, and then follow the prompts. There's Volt tokens and things that you need to specify with that. Down below a little bit further, the base requirements though, for SSL, you have your certificate store type and your key store path. For other components, as you get into this further, you will also have the Volt service name. I'm going to add Teamcenter DC Volt service to the beginning just so it groups it. And I'm going to say Teamcenter for the display name here. And that way I have that. Now I do need to check the ports here. So I have the Volt service port is 8082, Volt service cluster port is 8091. Now I'm going to go over to the install, scroll down to the bottom, and then you can see Volt service port is 8082, 8091 for this port here, and the names match. So in my upgrade guide, I essentially just uncommented the Windows requirements for logging the services. Notice that the OS username down here needs to be put in as well. If you miss any of these, it will fail at the beginning of the go, and you'll have to regenerate your build from Deployment Center. So I want to make sure I get them all correct for my build. So up here, I've got everything filled out. Everything's uncommented that needs to be uncommented, and I'm going to save that file. All right, so now that the file is saved, I'm going to go ahead and close it, close the install file, and any other files I might have open. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to run a administrative command prompt. So I'm going to say command prompt, run as administrator. I'm going to cd to the directory where that script is. So in my case, I didn't copy it out of here, so I just kind of extracted it in place. So I've got my deployment center path here, and that's where I want to go. So notice I'm in the 2506 media. Similar to if you're performing an upgrade, you would go to the new media and run the tem to do so. So now I'm going to paste this in. It'll change directories. Now that is a long path name. So it is kind of recommended to make sure that this path name is as short as possible, but for the sake of the video, we'll just go ahead and keep it. I'm going to do in this location, you'll come down, notice that you've got deployment center here. If I do deployment center.bat-h, it'll give me some help information about what all I can do with this. And you can see that a lot of it is like maintenance mode. If you come into the very top, the second entry though will give you what you need. So this entry right here is basically providing that this is an upgrade, and the input file will have the credentials. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, paste that in, make sure that any formatting or anything is taken care of. And you can see I've got deployment center.bat-upgrade-input file upgrade config.properties. As long as you don't have any typos or anything in there, you press enter and the deployment center upgrade will begin to go. So you can see it's upgrading deployment center now, and it's running through this upgrade in order to actually do the deploy. So it's going to build this out. It's one of 24 steps that are needing to be accomplished for this to finish up fully. Now, it is about 8 minutes to the top of the hour now. We're going to see and track how long this takes throughout the entire process. But for the sake of the video, we're going to go ahead and pause and then come back and just kind of recap what all it did during this process. Shouldn't take very long, 10, 15 minutes tops, and even that stretching it. So we'll come back at that point and we'll pick up right where we left off. All right, so we have finished up this deployment or upgrade of Deployment Center. It only took about 10 minutes in total, maybe a little less. And what you're going to see in here is essentially it comes through and it finds the source database. It backs up the database for Deployment Center. You come in and it backs up pretty much all of the directories that are important, your scripts, your quick deploy configurations, snapshots. It transfers the backup to a zipped archive, so it makes it safe. So you always have a rollback point. It backs up the DC Vault directory for your passwords, cleaning up the repository, and then basically just preps everything for the upgrade. Then it comes in, makes a couple of edits to the Deployment Center database, goes through and does the upgrade itself. Down at the bottom here, it will tell you that it has updated the utilities and the services, etc. And then it will say that it is completed, and it will tell you what the names of all the services are. It will also tell you what the URL is, even though it stays the same as the previous one. So in here, it tells you where the utilities are that you can run for this deploy, and it put it into the original web server directory that I had to begin with our 2412. So I have completed the Deployment Center upgrade. I'm just going to verify it. I'm going to hit exit. And then I'm going to come into my browser, go to Deployment Center. And at this point, I'm going to just close this other window. I'll look at it and notice that it does still say 2412 over here. But if I say DC admin, and then come in here, it'll still say 2412, but now my repository will pick up on the new 2506. So it's picking up on this. I have run the update on it, and you can see kind of everything is here for us. So in the environments, the next thing that I need to do is modify my environment. So even though the display hasn't really changed on here or anything, we'll have to take a look at that. I do know that the media is now picking up, and we can go through and actually kick off our upgrade of Teamcenter. So I'm just going to quickly come in here, and I've got my Teamcenter environment shut down already. And what we're going to do is essentially kick off this upgrade to kind of proof out the entire thing. So I'm going to come in here, and under software, I'm going to choose edit. And then in edit, I'm just going to go ahead and uncheck this template. I do not have this installed. If I had a template installed in the system, notice it has a little clock here, so it hasn't actually been installed yet. I'm going to hit update selected software, but if I had it already installed, I would need to install a 2506 BMIDE, open my template into that BMIDE so it upgrades it, and then repackage and add it in here. That's as simple as it gets. We do have videos in 2412 on updating a BMIDE template project. Just remember, the key thing with an upgrade is opening up that template project in the newest BMIDE so that you can upgrade that template so it's compatible with your upgrade. In our case, I'm just going to go ahead and choose edit again, and then we'll check 2506. And that's really all I have to do. I'm going to choose update selected software. And at this point, all I'm going to do is make any tweaks or adjustments that I want for the new build. So this, again, I'm doing kind of an in-place, same box, single instance upgrade. It's about the happiest path you can make, but it kind of shows what you're going to have to go through in order to make this work. So this is uploading. It's basically reading that media at the moment. And then when it gets done reading the media, it's going to go through and add that media here and jump me to options. So we're just kind of giving it a second to actually pick up on that, and then we'll move forward. All right, there it goes and snaps. So we've got 2506 pending the installation. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to options and take a look at what I have installed here. I'm on a single box, not distributed, running Java EE. I could go to applications and take a look at what's updating. With an upgrade, it should update all of the server-side extensions. And you can see all of these are pending an update. So you can kind of get a log as to what features are getting updated with this, and pretty much all of them will. Then I could hit edit here and add new features in if I wanted to, but we'll leave that for a future case. I'm going to choose components. And then in here, let me full screen this. And you can see I've got 100% pretty much across the board. There is one thing that I am noticing that's only 95% of the way. So I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to go to my corporate server first. The one thing that I will note is that my existing TC root is 2412. So it's picking up on 2412 as my existing TC root. It's not allowing me to change this. So my 2506 TC root is going to ultimately be 2412 in the name. So this is something I noticed in the first go through this process. You could get away with this by doing what Siemens recommends and standing up a separate environment and then making sure it's right for you and then moving everything over. That would work. But for now, I'm just kind of using the tool as it was designed and taking notes of things that may cause you headaches in the future. 95% on my microservices node. So this basically, the system could not pick up on my repository directory, my location for it. It was able to pick up on passwords and all of that, but my repo directory, it dropped. So I'm going to come in here and just provide my repo directory to it. It's inside of my TC root location. And if I come into my repo, which is right here, it has all of these files that were deployed prior. I'm going to copy it and basically paste it inside of the file repository. So at this point, if I save component settings, you'll see it go through and go to 100% for the line item. So now I'm at 100% across the board. Everything is there, and I'm going to go ahead and go to deploy and hit generate installation scripts. So this will generate the deploy scripts as we've been getting used to them. We just run the deployment center script against it, but there are a couple of caveats that I want to point out. Make sure that before you run this, you come into your active workspace build in the stage directory under source, and you remove any customizations that you've had in the past. So I could move this and save it for later and drop it back in after and tweak it. For now, I'm just going to remove it. The other thing that you'll want to make sure that you do is go into solution and this kit. Depending on how you built your modules, you may have had it edit this kit automatically. So you can see it's right here in the kit. I'm going to remove that from the top line item and the subsequent comma before it. And that way this build knows nothing about that P3 module that existed before, and that way I get a clean build and I can add those back after. Other things that you may want to do is clear out your BMIDE template directory and the BMIDE workspace, those types of things. Those are the types of things that could potentially cause issues when going through that build. So in this case, I've got my scripts, everything is good to go, and all I need to do is kick off this deployment. So I'm going to go ahead and just close out of the deployment center build, and everything is still stopped, everything is still good to go. If I come into my services, you can see deployment center is the only thing running. So in here, I'm going to open up a command prompt, run as administrator, and then in the command prompt I'm going to cd to the directory I put my scripts in. Now I do something a little bit different. I go into my deployment center location, repository, deploy scripts, and in this deploy scripts directory I've got my deploy and deploy instructions. I like to extract the folder right here, and I like to use 7-zip to do so. So I'll extract the folder here, and then in the folder you can see it's got the stuff. So I'll take this folder, cut it, and then I like to put it at the C temp directory when I run this. The reason I do that is it shortens the path link. So I don't want to run into any path links with extracting data or anything like that. I also want to get it out of that directory, so I'm kind of working in a nice stage directory. So I'm going to be in here. I'm going to take that path, cd to it. Let's do c temp deploy. And then once I'm in that directory, I'm essentially just going to run the deployer.bat -dc username equals dc admin in my case, -dc password equals dc admin in my case. And then I need to add the software location. It can't assume that the software that you use for deployment center is in the same spot. So I'm going to put it in C apps media Siemens software. And that's where my 2506 media is. So at this point, I'm just going to go ahead and press enter. And this will go through and validate that deployment. So we're going to let this run. The last time we ran this on this XL image with 32 gig of RAM, it took more than an hour. There are certain stops along the way that it will take. Just note that if you read through the error messages that pop up, in a lot of cases, it's having an issue accessing a directory, and it means that you have something running. You can simply just kick off the deploy again, and it will pick up where it left off. There is a point in the deployment that is the data model updater, and when that hits, it is not frozen. It just takes a very long time to complete that step. So if you see it stuck on a step that says something about data model, just note that it is probably updating the database at that point. And you should check your CPU utilization in the task just to verify that it's still running. But in here, it'll go through, it'll validate the prerequisites, it'll begin to back up, and you can see those statements here, prerequisites, and then it's beginning to back up, and then it's beginning to stop things So I had already went through and stopped a lot of things, but again, it tries to stop the things that are here. So it's stopping the FSC component as well as other components to be able to replace files. So what we're going to do is we're going to pause again. We're going to let this run through for the next hour or so, and then when we come back, we'll validate that the upgrade has completed successfully. Hello and welcome back to awtoolbox.com. My name's Glenn Keller, and in this demonstration, we have just completed the upgrade of Teamcenter 2506 from Teamcenter 2412, and you can see where we left off was the administrative command prompt was running the deploy script. And if we scroll through it, we can see that everything was successful. At the bottom, we get this little message that says the execution was successful. And then it tells me a little bit more about the microservices base URL preference, as well as the configurator as one of the installed services preference. And we need to make sure that we take into account those changes. However, if I choose exit here and close my dialog, you'll see a couple of things. First of all, it has created me a new 2506 and Business Modeler IDE link, and I have the old 2412 one here. Now, if I open the file location, the one thing I do want to note is the Siemens location, the Teamcenter 2412, this is now actually Teamcenter 2506. So just like we said in Deployment Center, it did give me the option to actually change that installation path, and that's probably part of the reason why Siemens recommends to go ahead and install a separate testing environment for the upgrade. But if you're just doing an in-place upgrade, then it's going to keep that same TC root, so it may be good to have the TC root initially designed to just be Teamcenter. In here, I've got my TC root definition, and I can see all of the different builds. I can see solar is here, but the one thing I do notice is there's this time date stamp solar up here as well. It looks like the full solar environment, but it's not very much different than the solar down here, 960. So just a couple of quirks that I've noticed with this in-place upgrade. Now, I can go ahead and delete the 2412 shortcut off the desktop or leave it. It's up to you. We'll go ahead and do things like clean up and stuff after we've tested. To begin with, I'm just going to go ahead and start my Teamcenter 2506 client. So this is my client here. While it launches, I'm going to open a services window, and you can see my indexing service is running now. And if I go to the T's, you can see my dispatcher is running. I need to start my dispatcher client to pick up on dispatcher processes. I can see the 2506 client versus the 2412 client. So I actually started the wrong one. I need to stop that one and start the 2506 one. So in here we've got the FSC, Global Indexing Search. This is not running, so I will need to start this in order for that to pick up. And I may need to go through and do a merge of my indexing data and kind of tune that up a little bit more. The Process Manager is here, as well as the Revision Configuration, Accelerator Service, the Server Manager, and the Suggestion Builder. So this is for the Active Workspace Assistant to provide suggestions in that assistant tool. And then the Vault service. And so everything that needs to be running is running. After the deployment, if I try and log into this, if I go just kind of log in with my InfoDBA user, we may get lucky with the existing deployment, and it may take us to the right spot, which you can see is being deployed at the moment. But one thing that I will note is that during this deployment process, your WAR files do need to be updated. And though it does log in successfully, if I come into my installation directory, TC root, and I come down to this web folder, the web folder has a new deployment folder inside of it. And if I take this, copy it, I need to deploy this either onto my web application server, whether that's IIS, it'd be a .zip file in that case, WebLogic, Tomcat, JBoss, what have you, and 2506 WebLogic is supported again. So I'm going to take mine into my Wildfly account here, go into my standalone location, deployments, And I've got an older deploy of a TC-WAR file from March. I'm going to paste this one on there, override that one in place. I don't like taking backups in this directory as it'll try and deploy those backups. But you can see now this is deployed. So the communication should still work and everything. The older WAR file wasn't too much different, so it did work, but I do highly recommend making sure you have the latest and greatest, and your SSO WAR files, if you are deploying security services, will also be deployed there. Now, a couple of things I like to do in the Rich client is I just like to do named references on a file and hit download and just make sure it creates it. So I'm going to say desktop and hit download. It did create the little spec down here, so I know the FMS system is working. I also like to go to the organization application. And in the organization application, it's going to show you all your groups and roles and those types of things. But it's also going to show you your volume information in here. And I like to come into the default volume and just make sure that everything lines up to where it's supposed to be. So I've got my training 01, my FSC ID, etc. So all this popped up and we are good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this one. I'm going to say file exit. And then once that closes, let's go ahead and try the Active Workspace environment. So in the Active Workspace environment, I'm going to close this, go into Active Workspace, and then in here, I'm going to come in and log in. So just right off the get-go, right after the upgrade, didn't have to really do much, and I'm in. So everything seems to be good. I'm just going to go ahead and do a star search real quick, make sure my indexer is running, and now I will need to go through and double check that the indexer is actually picking up on the new stuff. But everything seems to be working pretty good right after the build-up. The last thing I would do is come in here and actually take a look at maybe command prompts and other elements of the display. So that's kind of what I like to lead into. So for instance, if I were to come in here to 2412, the command prompt is still here. There isn't one in the 2506, so this is still the relative command prompt. And if I come in and say run as administrator, you'll see that it's pointing to the same directory. And if I do install-ayt, it'll ask, are you there? If I do install-ask_version, it'll tell me that I'm sitting at 2506 right here. So I did upgrade it. It's working great. I'll probably do a list users just to kind of prompt and see if I can create a session inside of the system. You can use things like import export reports to test out the FMS system in that command line. Now, I've tested out, I can see everything's working. I've got Active Workspace here. In the future video, we'll probably test a little bit more and go into things like the ping page and make sure everything's running okay. And in future videos, we'll get into the visualization system. In the next video, we'll talk a little bit about how to start that up. But we don't have any data just yet in our system to test out the viz. But it is working just fine, and we do get viz views, as you'll see in the next demo. So hopefully you've taken a lot out of this process, kind of learning what the prereqs are, what to take a look at. I know this is a faster video than what some of our deeper dive training videos have been, but it gives you kind of a way forward if you're sitting at 2412 today and you're hoping to get that 2506 build up and running pretty quick so you can play around with some of the features. This video should help you along the way. Just take a look at the documentation we supplied. Do it the way that makes the most sense for you. For me, a quick and dirty upgrade works great. For you, you may need to go and build that secondary system out and make sure that your prod data is moved over and upgraded associated. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next one.